Hi everyone, I am Celtic Manga, a self-taught artist with 18 years of experience. I often get asked, how do you get started with art? Where do you even begin? And that's exactly what we're going to tackle in this video. So where do we begin if we actually want to start art from zero? Well, if you're a beginner as in brand new to art, then this advice is for you. I'd like to say, here is my answer to that question. 3, 2, 1, boom. Just start drawing. Alright, that's the end of the video, guys. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the notification bell for future video. I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. I wasn't gonna do you like that. Now, we got some real advice. Okay, so I do want to say this though. Just start drawing, find something you want to draw, or something that inspires you, and draw it. So, let's talk about art, right? Some of the benefits of art is that it is a low cost of entry hobby that costs $5 or less, and yet it has so much endless depth, paralleling that of playing music, music production, and those type of hobbies. So anyway, all you really need is a pencil or paper. So go to your store, get started. It's probably laying on your desk right now. You can make art right now, and you didn't even know that. I myself use a digital tablet for art, but I also always go back to traditional just because it's a good habit to do that. And I use art software called Clip Studio Paint, which you will see later in this video. And it's only for demonstrative purposes. You don't need a fancy tablet or any crazy art software to make art. That's a huge myth. On the subject of tablets, should you get a tablet if you're a new artist? Here's the thing. Tablets can cost between $60 to $2,000, sometimes even more. I'd say any tablet below $60 isn't worth buying, and any tablet above $2,000 is, literally only if art is your career should you buy something like that. And on top of that, you need software like Clip Studio Paint, Photoshop. Those also cost money, and those are like the industry standard big two. There's also Krita and Metabang. And of course, for you old school people out there, there's Paint Tool Sai. But they don't have as many features as Clip Studio and Photoshop, just for my own personal taste. But you can still make good stuff in that software. At any rate, my advice is to stick with traditional art. You're going to learn a lot faster on traditional than you will with digital. Anyways, let's talk about drawing from reference. This is the first thing you should learn above everything else. A reference is simply a photo or sketch or artwork on which the illustration you are submitting is directly based. If that's too confusing for you and words don't quite do it for you, then here's an example. I've got the reference image that I used on the right side and the art that I made on the left side. And all I did to make this, even though it looks kind of elaborate and complex, all I did was use a pencil, a piece of printer paper, and a pen. I also used a ruler to get some straight lines, not cheating by the way. And I just copied the picture in my own style. Now let me make this distinction. I did not trace. There is a difference between tracing and using reference. Using reference is looking at the picture and beside you and drawing it on your own. Tracing is putting the paper on top of something else and then just copying it that way. Two completely different things. I would say you'll learn a lot faster if you use reference, although tracing can be used as a learning tool. Just don't trace art and try to pass it off as your own. So you might ask, why use reference? Why do you put so much emphasis on references and instead of, drawing from imagination? Isn't that what a real artist would do? Here's a myth for you. There has been this strange myth that's been going around since the early 2000 DeviantArt days, and it's even going around now. And what I find funny about this is that it's said by a lot of people who don't even make art. They have this idea in their head of what art should be, and it's this. It's not real art unless you draw from imagination. That's the myth. Using references is cheating. That's another myth. And this couldn't be further from the truth. Here's the fact. Using references will actually help you grow as an artist much, much faster than if you didn't. So why does it help you grow faster? Because your brain has something in it called the visual library. The more that you use reference, the bigger your visual library becomes as your brain starts to form those connections. And this goes for any skill. You practice a skill enough, your brain synapses are going to connect, and you're going to get better at doing it the second, the third, the 10th, the 20th, the 100th, the 1000th time. Repetition helps your memory. And the more you use reference, the better you'll be able to draw from imagination later on in life. The artist pictured here is a man that was known as Kim Young-ji, a really fancy, really famous Korean artist. Rest in peace, King. He actually passed away a few weeks ago at the time of the production of this video, and he was one of my favorite artists of all time. So drawing from imagination is going to take you years if that's something that you want to do. But in order to get to that point, you have to use references a lot, again, to build up your visual library in order to work up to that level. So next we're going to learn about symbol drawing. But what exactly is symbol drawing? Think back to when you were a kid and you were learning to put pencils and crayons and markers on paper. You were shown that not only can you write letters and numbers, but you can take an idea in your head and represent it on paper. Many of us learn to take our ideas like this and represent it with a symbol, much like a word represents an idea. An example is in the left-hand side of the drawing, this left portrait right here. You can see that this eye was drawn almost as a symbol. It's really flat. It's flat and two-dimensional. So was the nose. The nose was drawn almost as a symbol of a nose instead of a nose that rests in 3D space. The lips were drawn as a symbol, so were the ears kind of, and honestly, the whole picture, except for the hair, which is pretty good, the rest of this picture completely misses the point when it comes to representing an object. So why is symbol drawing bad? Well, symbols don't really look like this in real life. If you look at the left image versus the right image, there is a very clear difference in quality. But you might not be able to describe why they look different. You might just say, oh, well, the right one looks better. But that's okay, that's why we're here. The simple answer is we live in a three-dimensional world, but we are taught to think in 2D when we're in school. We instead have to learn to think in 3D. The drawing on the right shows that the artist knows how to think in 3D and represent those values and those forms in 3 dimensions. When I say forms, I mean his head. It's obviously a 3-dimensional object with multiple sides to it. So are the eyes and the sockets in which the eyes rest. The nose, the lips, they are 3D objects, however subtle they may be. But how do we start unlearning symbol drawing? How do we go from symbol drawing to what these artists are doing? How do people get this good? How can you possibly take your art to the next level? In order to achieve this effectively, in order to get really skilled at art, in order to get on that level and even push past that beginner stage, we must learn what is called the fundamentals of art. These are the fundamentals of art: perspective, form and structure, figure drawing, value, color theory, composition, brushwork, line quality, line weight and line economy, gesture, anatomy, and many more. This is just a list I came up with off the top of my head, but there's actually more than this. I would say these are the most important to focus on. I understand, though, that this is a lot to take in, and it can be pretty daunting and overwhelming to even start tackling any one of these. So I'm going to simplify it for you. The most important 2 fundamentals to focus on are as follows: perspective and form. Let's start with perspective, the most important fundamental of all. So how do we do that? How do we draw in 3D and properly unlearn symbol drawing? The best answer to this is perspective. I'll cover perspective first before I go into form, because perspective is a lot more complicated, but it's also the most important thing to learn. Perspective is one of the fundamentals of art, and I would argue it is the basis that all the other fundamentals rest on. In more specific terms, perspective is what we use to draw 3D objects and simplify 3D shapes and forms and place them in 3D space accordingly. Now that's a lot of talk, I understand. How does this actually work? I'll try to keep it simple and not go too much in depth about it. Perspective uses 2 things to accomplish what we call the illusion of depth that I talked about earlier. First thing is we got the horizon line. I'm gonna write this down. Horizon line. That's the line I just drew. and the vanishing point right here. Vanishing point. These two are the key ingredients in order to place objects properly in 3D space. So the horizon line is where the sky meets the ground at eye level, and this dot right here, the vanishing point, is what will act as our furthest away point for drawing everything else where most of our lines come from. So let's draw some boxes in 3D space. I'm going to draw just like a simple road here. I'm going to make the line get thicker as it comes towards us. And then I'm going to draw some buildings alongside of it. Maybe there's like a little sidewalk that comes out from it like this. I would normally use a ruler for something like this, but yeah, I'm lazy. I'm just going to be real with you. I'm going to start drawing a box like this. And from the vanishing point, I'm going to draw a line from the vanishing point all the way here to get the line just right for the building I'm trying to draw. Then I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to draw this line upwards, maybe make it go somewhere up like that. And then I'm going to use the vanishing point to sketch out a rough estimation of where this line on the building is going to be. This looks pretty complicated, but trust me, this is pretty basic when you get it down. This line's going to be straight, and of course this line is going to be straight. And then I'm going to erase the vanishing point. Sorry, I'm going to erase the horizon line behind it. So now it looks like we've got a box that is in 3D space. 3D space certified. You see, boxes don't actually look like this. You probably drew these in like biology or chemistry class or something like that, or maybe a science class. I know I did. Boxes don't actually look like this because this box is impossible. Because it can't exist in three-dimensional space, because it's not vanishing back towards any type of vanishing point. But this box is, because it's going back towards the vanishing point, and it's getting bigger as it comes towards us, and it's getting smaller as it goes away from us. If I draw something that's closer, like this, we'll just draw a big old building that covers up the H and horizon line. Why not? Let's go crazy with it. And then we can use this vanishing point as kind of a guide on getting this building just right. And then we can draw the line on where it stops. And we can use these lines that we just sketched out to draw the edges of the building that are going towards the vanishing point to give it some type of 3D space, some type of form, you might even say. We can even make this building taller if we want. If I decide I don't like how short the building is and I want it to match the composition of the picture more, I can use the vanishing point to get the edge of this building just right. It's all math. You don't have to be creative to do this at all, by the way. You just have to know a little bit of geometry and shape drawing. That's it. And if you don't want to do geometry, well, shoot, just use a ruler. I mean, shoot. Can't get any easier than that, right? Wow, that looks like an Xbox One or a refrigerator. Is there a difference? I'm not sure. But hey, there's a bigger box right here. We can also draw a box that is behind this. Maybe it's a little bit shorter than the other one. But I'm going to start getting a little bit faster here because I do this all the time. Maybe we can draw a shorter box on top of that is a little bit higher. And we can just draw something up here, and this aligns with that. This goes straight across, and this goes down. Maybe this is like some type of tower or something, but we've got the beginnings of what could be a city or a road or something. Maybe we can draw some lines on the road that come towards us. They get longer as they come towards. Can start drawing these outward like this. And you can see, like, you can get really detailed with perspective. You can start detailing in the sidewalk like that, keeping in mind that these lines are going to get closer together as they get further away. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there on perspective, but I think you guys get the point. That is how perspective works. So what we just did here, all of this is called 1 point perspective. I'm gonna write that down too. I'm not going to show you the other types of perspective here, but what we just did was called 1 point perspective. There is also 2 point perspective, 3 point perspective. There's even 5 point perspective, and then curvilinear. These are pretty cool too, but don't worry about these for now. Don't worry about these for now. They are even more complicated than 1 point perspective, and maybe even 1 point perspective was a little overwhelming for you. But I'm just showing you how you can, in fact, represent shapes in 3 dimensions just by using this one simple trick that non-artists hate. All right. But yeah, you can do some really cool stuff. But you might ask, Celtic manga, this looks like it's really only useful for backgrounds and cities. And I don't want to draw backgrounds in cities. What if I just want to draw human beings? How would I do that with just a bunch of boxes? And the answer is, you can. So this is how you can draw perspective for human figures using boxes and simple shapes. In the bottom left-hand corner here, you can see that even a portrait of a human being uses 2 point perspective with 2 vanishing points. See in this above example right here where my mouse is, that there's 2 vanishing points instead of 1 to draw these cubes. These lines are perpendicular to the horizon line, and every other line comes from one of the vanishing points. And you can use that to draw a cube, which you can then use to draw a human face. You just have to know the geometry of the face and how it aligns with the cube and how it's going to face. Shapes are pretty endless, and this extends to the whole human body as well. I just included these other images here as an example. If you're drawing multiple people in a scene, you can draw people, that are really close to the camera, and then this lady's further away, so she's gonna still be at eye level with the horizon line, but her feet are gonna be way higher up than these to, again, illustrate the illusion of depth. And if you're drawing some more dynamic poses like a human laying down, you can draw a box and then divide it into sections and draw the human body inside that box, giving you a really nice reference for where they should be. You should also use reference images in combination with this. It is kind of hard, but that is how it be. So yeah, that's how you can do anything in perspective. Landscapes, cities, animals, humans, whatever else your heart desires. You just have to know the 3D shapes that make up the form that you are trying to draw. With that being said, let's get into form, the next most important fundamental. I would say that form is equally as important as perspective. Thankfully, it's a lot simpler to explain. Form is basically just the shapes that you can draw using perspective. You can make spheres, boxes, cylinders, and other simple shapes, and then you can use these simple shapes as a basis for more complex forms. And that's really it for form. Short and sweet, right? Here's an example of form. This is what a lot of people call the Loomis method for portrait drawing. I use this a lot. It's my go-to. It's my bread and butter. But we're going all the way from a simple shape where we literally draw a circle, and then we draw some lines around it to define the form, which is called contour lines. Then we add in the shape of the jaw, and then after that we add in the nose, the eyebrows, the ear, the shape of the hair, the overall shape, never focusing too much on the details. Then once we get the general shape down, we erase the unneeded lines, we ink the drawing, and then we add shading and detail to it. And that's basically the process for how to draw anything, is start with a basic shape and then get the basic form around it, and then, go from there. So here's the biggest mistake that beginner artists make. The biggest mistake I see beginner and even intermediate artists make, in fact, is this. They want to get better at drawing humans because their characters don't look quite right. And let's be real, most artists want to draw people and not backgrounds. People are just really trendy right now, and you go on Instagram, all you see is people drawing pretty girls and pretty K-pop boys. I mean, that's just how it is. That's what people want to draw. That's what the people want. But the thing is, a lot of these artists, they hit a wall and they can't improve in any further. They decide to learn the fundamentals of art, which is good, but they go straight into the harder fundamentals, usually anatomy and gesture drawing, which is the advice that they get. And then complex human forms on top of that, and right away they get it all wrong. It doesn't look right, and then they get discouraged, and then they think art is too hard and they quit. So why is this wrong? Why not start with gesture and anatomy? Because they skipped step 1 and went straight to step 7. Step 1 is perspective, step 7 is like gesture and anatomy. Oftentimes these artists don't know perspective or form at all, let alone any of the other base fundamentals. And as a result, they learn nothing, and their art often still looks bad or even worse. If you skip straight to gesture drawing without understanding the very basics, it's only going to hurt you. Gesture is meant to be the icing on the cake that refines well-established work. But if you have no cake, if you have no fundamentals for it to rest on, I think you get what they mean. These fundamentals that are really advanced, they cannot rest on their own. So what do I recommend instead of gesture and anatomy? I would say learn figure drawing. Figure drawing is just using forms to draw the human figure without using gesture and anatomy yet. Learn the general shapes of the human figure before you start trying to make your humans look dynamic and anatomically sound. You can still learn some basic anatomy, like, where the collarbones are, the three-dimensional shape of the back, but only really focus on what it looks like on the outside. You don't need to learn all 200 something bones in the human body unless you're gonna go to medical school or something. All right, so let's move on. I've got some further advice for new artists, and this is going to be really helpful for a lot of you. My first piece of advice is to join a community. Art can be a lonely endeavor, and to make it less lonely, you need other artist friends to, make friends with and make art with. Having a community will make you grow a lot faster because you and your friends, if you're honest with each other, you can tell each other if their art sucks, or if it's good, or if they're improving. And you're going to improve faster than if you don't have any friends at all. So join a community, whether it's a Discord, whether it's somewhere on Reddit, and then you just find like a group chat or something. Maybe it's on another social media site. Maybe it's a Facebook group. Do what works for you. My second piece of advice is to practice 1 to 2 hours a day on just the fundamentals. Now, what I mean by practice 1 to 2 hours a day is take the fundamentals, draw a bunch of boxes, draw a bunch of whatever you're having trouble with, practice that, and then after that, draw for fun. That being said, take breaks. Don't draw more than 1 to 2 hours a day because you're just going to burn yourself out. Do what is sustainable for the next few years of your life, not because you have a sudden surge of motivation. You might be motivated to draw 8 to 12 hours a day for like 2 or 3 weeks after watching this video. And that's great. But then after that motivation goes away, how long can you keep that level of effort up? I think one of the greatest fighting gamers of all time said that. I think it was Daigo Umehara in his book, The Will to Keep Winning. He said, don't burn yourself out. How long can you keep that level of effort up? Do something that is sustainable for you and keep it consistent. I would rather somebody practice for 30 minutes a day for 6 days a week all year than somebody practice 8 hours a day for a month or two and then quit. The person who practiced 30 minutes a day for the whole year is going to get a lot better. Maybe at a slower rate, but consistently they're going to be better off at the end of the year. But also, in addition to practice, don't just practice. Draw for fun too. You need to draw for fun because it's going to map your progress. You're going to get better and better and better, and you want to see the results of that progress. If you just grind the fundamentals for years and years, but you never actually try to apply those fundamentals to your art, you're never going to get any better. So balance it 50-50. Practice half the time and then draw half the time. You can do 1 hour of practice and 1 hour of fun. or 30 and 30, whatever works for you. My fifth piece of advice, my fifth piece of advice is art is a journey. It is not a destination. So what do I mean by this? What I think it's important, and I struggle with this a lot. It's important to take the small wins and the small victories and don't really think about the end game just yet. Art really is about the journey and not the destination, in terms of you just gotta realize you're gonna be bad early on, and that's okay. It's okay to be bad at something, because that's the first step towards being kind of decent and kind of good at something, and then eventually pretty competent, and then eventually an expert. You just gotta do it a lot. You gotta do the thing, man. A lot of people, there's this myth that people have to be born with talent to do something, and I only think that's true for a small subset of skills, like maybe sports. Maybe you need to be born into it to do that, but when it comes to stuff like art or any other similar skill set that you don't need crazy genetics to do, art can be done by anybody. You don't need talent to do art. So enjoy the journey. Don't worry about the destination. You might surprise yourself. In fact, I think a lot of people say, well, I don't want to grind for 5 years just to be good at art. And it's like, I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't even take you 5 years to get good at art. You could probably get to a decent level that you're comfortable with in about 6 months to a year. I guarantee it. If you just stay consistent, you can get pretty decent pretty fast. And then from there, you can go from pretty decent to good, and then from good to great, and then great to, oh my goodness, how is this guy not famous yet? Just got to put in the work, just like anything else. And of course, my final piece of advice is social media growth is not important. Your skill is. Think about this. Who do you think is going to get the most follows on social media? The person who spends all their time on marketing, but their art sucks, or somebody whose art is really good, but they hardly market themselves at all? And it's kind of funny. Some people do get a lot of follows, even if their art is bad, but like most of the time, if somebody's art is really, really, really good, they're going to get noticed. You do have to kind of properly market yourself too, but that shouldn't be the focus. Your skill in art should be the focus, because your skill is going to be what sells your social media ultimately. If you decide to make a career out of it, that is. Anyways, that's it for my future advice for new artists. Now let's move on to resources. I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. I know I kind of brain dumped you with a bunch of advice without any concrete let's get started type of information. So if you want to actually get started with art, here's some resources for you to go and follow along with to take your first steps. The first thing I want to recommend is a video on YouTube called The Introduction to Perspective by David Finch. Just look it up on YouTube, those exact words, and click the video. Watch it, draw along with it. I think it's like 30 minutes to an hour long. And yeah, that sounds like a long time, but you're going to need to dump time into art if you want to get good. You can also watch it at like 1.5 or 2 times speed to shorten that watch time. Maybe that'll help you a little bit. And then there's Drawabox. Drawabox.com is a free resource that allows you to systematically start from zero and get all the way to drawing complex figures of all kinds. I have personally tried this and I didn't finish it. I intend to go and finish it later in the year, if not next year. But it's a really good program. It's going to get anybody just really solid at art really fast. It is grindy. It has a lot of homework. There's a section of Drawabox that has you drawing 250 boxes. I'm not kidding. The 250 box challenge. But it is good. It'll get you really good at perspective real fast. And then beyond that, it gets you even better. And then the 2 paid resources I recommend are Marshall Vandruff's Perspective course from 1994. It is old, but it's good, and it only costs $12. Just look it up on Google, go buy the course, support Marshall Vandruff. I'm not sponsored by him, I promise. I don't even know the guy. I just listened to his podcast once. And then I tried his course, and I was like, shoot, this is pretty good. It's a really good resource on perspective, and it's going to help you out a lot, trust me. And then, of course, the final one I recommend is something that's just going to help you in general a lot as a beginner. And the book picture is on the right here. It's called Drawing for the Absolute and Utter Beginner by Claire Watson Garcia. I actually own a physical copy of this book. I think it might have been between $10 and $20 online when I bought it at the time, but it has helped me a lot. It's very good just for getting the very basics down, and it may even teach you something if you are an experienced artist. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really do hope this video was helpful. And as always, if you like the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the notification bell to get notified when new videos come out. Have a great rest of your day, and best of luck on your art journey. This is Celtic Manga, signing out.